They didn't invite the billionaire's black wife to the reunion, so she took the $1.9 million house. The rain was coming down hard that Thursday morning in Atlanta when everything started to unravel. Monica Rivers sat in her office on the 42nd floor of the Chin Industries building, looking out at the city below while her assistant brought in the morning mail. She had no idea that a simple piece of paper was about to bring back memories she thought she had buried 20 years ago. Among the business letters and charity invitations was something different. A glossy invitation with gold lettering that made her stomach turn the moment she saw the logo. Pemberton Academy Class of 2004 20-year reunion, it said in fancy script that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery bill. Monica picked up the invitation with steady hands even though inside she felt like that 18-year-old girl again. The one who walked those hallways with her head down, trying to be invisible. The one who ate lunch in the library because the cafeteria felt like enemy territory. The one who got straight A's but never got invited to a single party. She opened the invitation slowly, already knowing what she would find inside. Or rather, what she wouldn't find. Because this wasn't actually addressed to her. It was addressed to her husband, Marcus Chen, the tech billionaire whose family name was plastered on buildings across 3 continents. The invitation made that crystal clear. Mr. Marcus Chen, and guessed it said, like she was just an accessory to be brought along if he felt like it. The thing is, Monica graduated from Pemberton Academy too. She was in the same class as Marcus, though they didn't meet until years later at a technology conference in Silicon Valley. She had earned her spot at that elite private school through pure academic excellence and a scholarship that covered what her mother's 3 jobs couldn't. But apparently, none of that mattered to whoever was planning this reunion. To them, she was just the plus one. The black girl who somehow ended up married to one of their golden boys. The outsider who got lucky. Monica set the invitation down and pulled up her laptop. It took her exactly 3 minutes to find what she was looking for. The reunion committee's website was exactly what she expected. 5 women's faces smiled back at her from the screen, all white, all wealthy, all exactly the same as they were 20 years ago, just with better Botox and more expensive highlights. Sarah Hamilton Pierce was the committee chair, because of course she was. Even back in high school, Sarah acted like she was running for mayor of a town that existed only in her head. There was Victoria Ashford, whose father owned half the commercial real estate in Atlanta. Emma Fitzgerald, who married a senator's son and never let anyone forget it. Lauren Cross, who inherited her family's media empire. And finally, Brittany Nash, who seemed to exist solely to agree with whatever the other 4 said. These were the same 5 women who made Monica's high school years a special kind of hell. Not through outright bullying, that would have been too obvious and potentially damaging to their reputations. Instead, they specialized in the kind of casual cruelty that left no visible marks but scarred just the same. Monica remembered the time in junior year when she won the state debate championship. It was a huge deal, the first time Pemberton had won in a decade. The school newspaper was supposed to do a front-page story about it. But somehow, mysteriously, the story got bumped to page 3 to make room for a feature about Sarah's Sweet 16 party planning. She remembered senior year when she was nominated for student body treasurer, a position she was uniquely qualified for given her math skills and attention to detail. But Sarah's group started a whisper campaign about how it would look weird to have someone on scholarship managing student funds. As if being poor was contagious or criminal. The nomination was quietly withdrawn, and Monica was told it was for her own good to avoid embarrassment. But the worst part wasn't the big moments. It was the 1,000 small cuts. The way conversation stopped when she walked by. The group projects where suddenly everyone had already partnered up. The study groups that were always full when she asked to join. The parties she heard about on Monday morning but never knew about on Friday night. They never said it was because she was black or because she was poor. They didn't have to. The message was clear in every look, every whispered conversation, every invitation that never came. Monica closed the laptop and made a decision. She picked up her phone and called her lawyer, James Peterson, who had been handling her real estate investments for the past 5 years. "James, you know that property in Buckhead we've been looking at? The Morrison estate," she said, her voice calm and professional. "The one where the owner's been dragging their feet on the sale?" James replied. "That's the one. I want you to make them an offer they can't refuse. 1.9 million, cash, with a closing date before the end of the month." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Monica, that's 300,000 over asking price. Are you sure?" She smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Very sure." "And James? Make sure the sale is registered under my maiden name. Monica Rivers, not Chen." She hung up and looked at the invitation again. The reunion was in 6 weeks, and according to the committee's website, they were still desperately searching for the perfect venue. The Morrison estate was legendary in Atlanta society circles. 8 acres of perfectly manicured grounds in the heart of Buckhead, with a 15,000-square-foot antebellum mansion that had been featured in countless magazines and movies. It was exactly the kind of place that Sarah Hamilton Pierce would kill to use for her perfect reunion. And in 6 weeks, it would belong to Monica. She just had to wait for the right moment to let them know it. 3 weeks passed before Sarah's committee hit their first real crisis. Every venue they contacted was either booked, too small, or not impressive enough for the image they wanted to project. Sarah was getting desperate, and desperate people make interesting choices. That's when Victoria remembered something her real estate agent had mentioned. "There's this incredible estate in Buckhead that just changed hands," she said during their committee meeting at the country club. "The Morrison estate. I heard the new owner might be willing to rent it out for events." Sarah's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. The Morrison estate was perfect. It was more than perfect. It was the kind of venue that would make everyone understand that their class, their group, was different. Special. Elite. "Get me the contact information," Sarah ordered, already imagining the photos, the gasps of envy, the social media posts that would follow. "I don't care what it costs. We need that venue." Victoria made some calls and got the number for the property management company now handling the estate. Sarah called immediately, using her most professional voice, the one she reserved for people she needed something from. "Good afternoon, this is Sarah Hamilton Pierce. I'm calling about the Morrison estate. We're interested in renting it for a very exclusive event." The property manager, a woman named Denise, was polite but firm. "I'll need to check with the owner about availability. May I ask what kind of event?" "It's our 20th class reunion from Pemberton Academy," Sarah said, making sure to emphasize the school name. Everyone in Atlanta knew Pemberton meant money and status. "We're expecting about 200 guests, all very successful alumni." "I see," Denise said. "Let me get some basic information and I'll present your request to the owner." Sarah rattled off details about the date, the catering plans, their budget, which was impressive even by Buckhead standards. She name-dropped every important family that would be attending, every CEO, every politician, every person of influence who had graduated with them. "This will be the social event of the fall season," Sarah assured her. The Morrison estate would be the perfect setting for such a distinguished gathering. Denise promised to get back to her within 48 hours. Sarah hung up feeling confident. How could anyone turn down the chance to host such an important event? What Sarah didn't know was that Monica was sitting in her home office, looking at the email Denise had just sent her with all the details of the request. She read through Sarah's list of important guests, noting that her own name was nowhere on it. Neither was Marcus's, for that matter. It seemed that even his billions weren't enough to overcome the sin of marrying her. Monica typed her response carefully. "Please inform Ms. Hamilton Pierce that we would be happy to discuss renting the estate. However, I prefer to meet with the entire planning committee in person to ensure the event aligns with our values for the property. Please schedule a meeting for Thursday at 2 p.m. at the estate." Thursday arrived with the kind of perfect Atlanta weather that made everything look like a movie set. Sarah and her committee drove up the long driveway to the Morrison estate in their matching white Range Rovers, because apparently, they still moved as a pack even 20 years later. The estate was even more magnificent than the photos suggested. Ancient oak trees lined the driveway, their branches creating a natural cathedral. The mansion itself stood proud and pristine, its white columns gleaming in the afternoon sun. The ground stretched out in every direction, perfect green lawns dotted with heritage rose gardens and a pool area that looked like it belonged in a five-star resort. Denise met them at the door, professional in her navy suit and warm smile. "Ladies, welcome to the Morrison estate. The owner will meet you in the main parlor." She led them through the marble foyer, past priceless art and antique furniture that whispered old money and good taste. Sarah and her committee tried not to gawk, but it was hard. This place was everything they wanted to be associated with. The parlor was a study in southern elegance. Silk curtains filtered the afternoon light, creating a golden glow over everything. The furniture was clearly antique but perfectly maintained. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases on every surface. It was the kind of room where important things happened, where deals were made and dynasties were built. "The owner will be with you shortly," Denise said. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." They sat on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than most people's cars, whispering to each other about how perfect everything was. Sarah was already mentally planning where the registration table would go, where the bar would be set up, how the lights would look in the garden. Then the door opened, and Monica Rivers walked in. But she didn't look like the Monica Rivers they remembered from high school. This Monica wore a custom-tailored crimson suit that fit her like it was painted on. Her hair was styled in a way that managed to be both professional and stunning. Diamond earrings caught the light when she moved. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Sarah's face went through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally, a kind of horrified understanding. "Hello, Sarah," Monica said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Victoria, Emma, Lauren, Brittany. It's been a long time." She sat down across from them, crossing her legs elegantly. "Though not so long that you'd forget to invite me to our class reunion, surely?" The silence in that room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Victoria looked like she might faint. Emma was studying her manicure like it held the secrets of the universe. Lauren was frozen in place, and Brittany looked confused, which was pretty much her default expression. "Monica," Sarah finally managed to squeak out. You own this place." Monica smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I do. Purchased it 3 weeks ago, actually. When I heard you were looking for a venue for our reunion, I thought it might be nice to help out. After all, we're all Pemberton alumni, aren't we?" She emphasized the word all just enough to make her point crystal clear. Sarah tried to recover, slipping back into her committee chair persona. "Of course. This is wonderful. Your estate is absolutely perfect for what we have in mind." "Is it?" Monica asked, tilting her head slightly. "Tell me more about what you have in mind. I noticed from your guest list that it's quite selective." Victoria jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Well, you know how these things are. We tried to track down everyone, but after 20 years, some people are harder to find than others." Monica pulled out her phone and showed them her own Pemberton Academy alumni directory, the same one they had used to create their list. "Interesting. Because I found everyone quite easily. Including myself. And my husband, Marcus Chen. You remember Marcus, don't you? He was valedictorian of our class." The room got even quieter if that was possible. Sarah's face had gone from white to red and was now settling into a kind of blotchy pink. "There must have been an oversight," she said weakly. "You know how chaotic planning these things can be. An oversight, Monica repeated slowly, like she was tasting the words. The same kind of oversight that kept me off the homecoming committee. Or out of the National Honor Society photo, even though I had the second highest GPA in our class. Those kinds of oversights. Nobody answered because what could they say? They all knew exactly what they had done, both then and now. The only difference was that now Monica had the power to do something about it. Monica stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, her voice still perfectly pleasant. "You can have your reunion here at my estate. It's a beautiful venue, and I'm sure everyone would be impressed. My rate is $25,000 for the weekend, plus additional fees for staff and security." Sarah's eyes widened. That was more than double what they had budgeted, but the estate was so perfect, and now they were trapped. They couldn't exactly walk away without looking like the petty, prejudiced mean girls they were. However, Monica continued, "There are some conditions. First, every single member of our graduating class gets an invitation. Every single one. Including the scholarship kids you conveniently forgot. Including the ones who don't have impressive job titles now. Including the ones who might not fit your image of success." She paused, looking at each of them in turn. "Second, the invitation list will be public on your website, so everyone can see who's included. No more secret exclusive lists. Third, I'll be attending, naturally, as will my husband. We'll be seated at the head table, as is appropriate for the venue hosts. And finally," Monica said, moving toward the door, "you'll be making a donation of $50,000 to the Pemberton Academy Scholarship Fund, specifically earmarked for students of color from low-income families. Consider it your way of ensuring future students don't have to deal with the same oversights I did." She turned at the door, giving them one last smile. "Denise will send over the contracts. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I'm afraid the estate will no longer be available for your event. I might just decide to host my own reunion here instead. One where everyone is actually welcome." Monica walked out, leaving the 5 women sitting in stunned silence in her parlor. In her house. On her terms. The girl they had tried so hard to exclude, to diminish, to erase from their perfect little world, now held all the cards. And the beautiful irony was that they had walked right into it, driven by their own desperation to impress and exclude. Sarah finally found her voice. "We don't have a choice, do we?" Victoria shook her head slowly. "If we don't take it, she'll tell everyone we refuse to rent from her because..." She couldn't even finish the sentence. The implications were too damaging to their carefully maintained images. Emma was doing calculations on her phone. "Between the 5 of us, we can cover the extra costs. It's not about the money anyway." And it wasn't. It was about power. About who got to decide who belonged and who didn't. About 20 years of assuming they were the ones who got to make those decisions. Lauren was the first to really understand what had happened. "She played us," she said with something that might have been admiration. "She knew we'd want this place. She knew we'd have to come here. She set the whole thing up." Brittany, still confused, asked, "But how did she afford this place? I thought she was poor." Monica's voice came through the intercom system, making them all jump. "I was. But unlike you, I didn't peak in high school. I built a tech consulting firm that I sold for $30 million 5 years ago. My husband's fortune is just a bonus. I bought this house with my own money, earned through my own work. Something you might understand if you'd ever bothered to actually know me." The intercom clicked off, leaving them in silence again. 45 minutes later, Sarah called Denise and agreed to all of Monica's terms. What choice did they have? They couldn't use another venue now without everyone asking why they didn't use the Morrison estate. They couldn't exclude anyone from the list without Monica making it public. They were completely and thoroughly trapped by their own prejudices and desperation. The contracts were signed within 24 hours. The donation was made to the scholarship fund. The new, complete invitation list was posted on the website, causing a stir among alumni who wondered why the sudden change in approach. And Monica Rivers Chin got her invitation to her own high school reunion, hand-delivered by Sarah Hamilton Pierce herself, who had to smile and pretend she was delighted to do it. The reunion was still 5 weeks away, but Monica had already won. Not through petty revenge or dramatic confrontation, but by simply being successful enough to make them meet her. By being powerful enough to set the terms. By being gracious enough to let them have their party, just not on their terms anymore. She kept the $25,000 rental fee, of course, but donated it to a foundation that helped young black women in tech. The $50,000 from the scholarship fund would help kids like her for years to come. And Sarah's committee had to smile and pretend they were happy about all of it, because anything else would reveal them for what they really were. The night of the reunion finally arrived, and it was everything Sarah had dreamed of and more. The Morrison estate looked magical with lights strung through the ancient oaks and lanterns floating in the pool. The food was exceptional, the music perfect, the atmosphere elegant. Everyone was impressed, everyone was talking about how magnificent it all was. And there, at the head table, sat Monica Rivers Chin, looking absolutely radiant in a gold gown that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. Marcus was beside her, his hand on hers, both of them chatting easily with the other guests who seemed genuinely delighted to finally meet the woman they'd heard so much about but never known in school. Sarah had to give a speech, of course. She stood at the podium, looking out at all the faces, including the ones she tried to exclude. The scholarship kids who were now doctors and teachers and artists. The people who didn't fit her narrow definition of success but who had built meaningful lives nonetheless. And Monica, always Monica, watching with that small smile that said she knew exactly what Sarah was thinking. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Sarah began, her voice slightly shaky. "It's wonderful to see everyone here, every single member of our graduating class." She had to emphasize that because Monica had insisted it be included in the speech. "We're especially grateful to Monica Rivers Chin for opening her beautiful home to us tonight." The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. People were looking at Monica with new respect, wondering how they had missed getting to know her better in school. Sarah continued with her prepared remarks, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. Because she could see what Monica had done. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about forcing them to confront their own prejudices, their own smallness. Monica hadn't taken anything from them except their ability to exclude others. She had given them exactly what they wanted, their perfect venue, their impressive reunion, but on terms that made them include everyone. The really brilliant part was that the reunion was actually better for it. The conversations were more interesting with a diverse group of people. The stories were more varied and engaging. The connections being made were more genuine. It was the reunion they should have planned all along if they hadn't been so focused on maintaining their little exclusive bubble. As the evening wound down, Monica stood by the French doors that led to the garden, looking out at the lights reflected in the pool. Sarah approached her, holding 2 glasses of champagne like a peace offering. "You did all this on purpose," Sarah said quietly. "Bought this place just to make a point." Monica took one of the glasses but didn't drink. "I bought this place because it's a good investment. The fact that it allowed me to make a point was just a bonus." They stood in silence for a moment, watching their classmates laugh and reconnect in Monica's home. "I never understood," Sarah said finally, "why you didn't try harder to fit in back then." Monica turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time all evening. "I did try, Sarah. For 2 years, I tried everything. I changed how I dressed, how I talked, what I ate for lunch. I straightened my hair until it was damaged. I saved up to buy the right brands. But it was never enough, was it? Because the problem wasn't what I did or didn't do. The problem was who I was." Sarah's face flushed, but she didn't deny it. How could she? They both knew it was true. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and she might have actually meant it. 20 years and several $1 million too late, but maybe she meant it. Monica shrugged elegantly. I'm not. Everything you and your friends did to me, every exclusion, every slight, every reminder that I didn't belong, it just made me work harder. Made me hungrier. Made me more determined to succeed on my own terms. So in a way, I should thank you. She raised her glass in a mock toast. To the mean girls of Pemberton Academy. Without you, I might not have fought so hard to prove you wrong. Sarah didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They stood there, two women who had taken very different paths from the same starting point, one who had tried to guard the gates and one who had simply built her own kingdom. The party continued around them, the sound of laughter and conversation filling the rooms of Monica's estate. People were taking pictures, exchanging numbers, making plans to stay in touch. The reunion Sarah had planned as an exclusive showcase had become something else entirely, something more inclusive and genuinely meaningful. As the evening ended and guests began to leave, many of them stopped to thank Monica personally. Not just for hosting, but for insisting everyone be included. The scholarship kids especially, the ones who'd felt like outsiders for so long, finally felt like they belonged. One woman, Jennifer, who had been on scholarship with Monica, hugged her with tears in her eyes. I wasn't going to come, she admitted. When I saw the original committee, I figured it would be the same as high school. But then the new list came out, and I saw your name as host, and I knew it would be different. Monica hugged her back, remembering all the lunches they'd eaten in silence in the library, two outsiders who never quite figured out how to be insiders. We all deserve to be here, Monica said. We always did. By midnight, the estate was quiet again. The catering staff was cleaning up, the lights were being taken down, and the Range Rovers were pulling away down the long driveway. Monica stood in her foyer, shoes off, watching the last car disappear. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You know, you could have just said no when they asked to rent the place, he said, kissing her temple. You didn't have to do all this. Monica leaned back against him, feeling the tension of the evening finally starting to fade. Yes, I did. Not for them, but for me. For the girl I used to be who thought there was something wrong with her. Who thought if she just tried harder, she could earn their acceptance. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. I needed to show her that she was always enough. That their acceptance was never worth earning in the first place. Marcus understood. He'd had his own experiences with exclusion, different from hers but no less painful. It was one of the things that had drawn them together, that shared understanding of what it meant to be on the outside looking in. They walked through their house, their beautiful estate that Sarah and her committee had coveted so desperately. Monica touched the surfaces, straightened a painting, adjusted a flower arrangement. This was her home, bought with her money, furnished with her taste, filled with her choices. The ultimate proof that the opinions of small-minded people couldn't define her worth. The story could have ended there, with Monica's quiet triumph and Sarah's grudging acceptance. But life is never that neat, and the real impact of that evening rippled out in ways nobody expected. 2 weeks after the reunion, Monica received a call from the Pemberton Academy Board of Directors. They'd heard about her donation to the scholarship fund and wanted to discuss something more. Would she consider joining the board? They needed someone with her perspective, her success, and yes, her understanding of what it meant to be an outsider at their institution. Monica agreed, and within a year, she had revolutionized their scholarship program, increasing both funding and support systems for students who didn't come from privilege. Sarah, for her part, went through her own transformation. The reunion had forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. She started therapy, began examining her own biases, and slowly, painfully, started to change. She even reached out to Monica 6 months later, not for forgiveness exactly, but to acknowledge what she'd done and the harm it had caused. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. The two women would never be friends, there was too much history for that, but they found a kind of understanding. They served on some of the same charity boards now, attended the same events. Sarah always made sure to acknowledge Monica properly, to include her, to treat her with the respect she'd always deserved. The Morrison estate became a symbol in Atlanta society, not just of wealth and success, but of transformation. Monica hosted events there that brought together people from all backgrounds, breaking down the barriers that had kept Atlanta society so segregated for so long. She became known not just as Marcus Chen's wife, but as Monica Rivers Chen, a force in her own right, a woman who had turned exclusion into excellence. The 25th Reunion Committee contacted Monica before anyone else. They wanted to host it at the Morrison estate again, but this time, Monica was the first person they called, the first person they consulted, the first person they made sure was included. She agreed, with one condition. The committee had to be diverse, representing all the different groups from their class, not just the ones who'd always held power. And so, 25 years after graduation, the Pemberton Academy class of 2004 held another reunion at Monica's estate. But this time, it was truly everyone's reunion. The committee included scholarship kids and trust fund babies, people of all races and backgrounds, successful CEOs and struggling artists, all given equal voice in the planning. Sarah was there, of course, but as a regular attendee, not as the queen bee she'd once tried to be. She stood in the same parlor where Monica had laid out her terms 5 years earlier, and she could see how much had changed. Not just the people, but the whole dynamic of their class. They weren't divided into exclusive cliques anymore. They were just people who'd shared a high school experience, for better or worse, and were now sharing their adult lives. Monica gave a speech this time, standing at the same podium Sarah had used 5 years before. She talked about transformation, about growth, about the power of inclusion. She talked about how their class had changed, how they'd all changed, and how that change had made them better. She didn't mention the past directly, didn't call out anyone's previous behavior, but everyone knew what she meant. Everyone understood that this moment, this inclusive gathering in this beautiful space, was what they should have been all along. The title of tonight's event, Monica said, looking out at all the faces, the familiar and the previously forgotten, could have been, "They didn't invite the billionaire's black wife to the reunion." That's what happened 5 years ago. But tonight's title is different. Tonight, it's, "We all came home together." The applause was thunderous, genuine, and lasted for a full minute. People were crying, hugging, really seeing each other maybe for the first time. The barriers that had seemed so important in high school, so permanent and defining, had finally, truly fallen. As Monica stepped down from the podium, she thought about that invitation that had started it all. The one addressed to Marcus and Guest, the one that had tried to erase her existence. She'd kept it, framed it actually, and hung it in her office as a reminder. Not of the hurt, but of how far she'd come. Of how the girl who'd been nobody's guest was now everybody's host. The Morrison estate stood proud in the Atlanta night, its lights shining like beacons, its doors open to all. Inside, 200 people celebrated not just their shared past, but their inclusive future. And at the center of it all was Monica Rivers Chen, the woman who'd bought more than just a house. She'd bought change. She'd bought justice. She'd bought the power to rewrite the story, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. The billionaire's black wife they didn't invite to the reunion. She didn't just take the $1.9 million house. She took their whole world and made it better. Made it bigger. Made it include everyone it should have included all along. And that, more than any revenge, more than any vindication, was the sweetest victory of all. Years later, when people talked about the Pemberton Academy class of 2004, they didn't talk about who was popular in high school or who married well or who made the most money. They talked about Monica Rivers Chen and how she transformed not just a reunion, but an entire community's understanding of what it meant to belong. They talked about how one woman's refusal to be erased became everyone's invitation to be seen. They talked about the Morrison estate and how it became a symbol of what was possible when you stopped trying to keep people out and started inviting everyone in. Monica still lives in that estate, still hosts events that bring together people from all walks of life. The scholarship fund she insisted on has sent dozens of students to Pemberton who might never have had the chance otherwise. Many of them have gone on to their own successes, their own triumphs, carrying forward the lesson Monica taught that night: your worth is not determined by other people's invitations. Sometimes you have to buy the whole house and write your own. And sometimes, when you do that, you don't just change your own story. You change everyone's. The girl they tried to exclude became the woman who included everyone. The reunion they tried to keep exclusive became the model for inclusive gatherings throughout Atlanta society. The $1.9 million house became priceless in its impact on a community that had been divided for too long. And Monica Rivers' chin. She became proof that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success so complete, so transformative, that it changes the very ground on which your former tormentors stand. It's power used not to exclude but to include. It's victory that lifts everyone up, even the ones who once tried to keep you down. That's the thing about people like Sarah and her committee. They thought they were protecting something precious by keeping others out. They thought exclusivity meant value, that limiting access increased worth. But Monica showed them the opposite was true. The reunion was better with everyone there. The conversations were richer, the connections more meaningful, the memories more worth making. By forcing them to open their doors, she didn't diminish what they had. She enhanced it. She showed them what they'd been missing all along.